Hi, boys and girls. I found a story that I'd like to read to you on iReady Reading. Unfortunately, I couldn't share it with you, and I'm not able to show you the pictures as it's online. But I hope that you'll listen along and we can talk about it when we're done. It is called My Rotten Redheaded Older Brother, and it's written by Patricia Polacco. My brother and our mother and I all lived with my grandparents on their farm in Union City, Michigan. Now my babushka, my grandmother, knew lots of things. She knew just how to tell a good story. She knew how to make ordinary magical things. She knew how to make the best chocolate cake in Michigan. After she told my brother and me a grand tale about her homeland, we'd always ask, "Bubby, is that true?" She'd answer, "Of course is true, but it may not have happened." And then she'd laugh. Now, I knew that she loved me all right, but I couldn't quite understand how she could even like my older brother Richard. He had orange hair that was like wire. He was covered in freckles and looked like a weasel with glasses. The one thing that my Bubby didn't seem to know was how perfectly awful my brother really was. Mind you, he was always nice whenever she was around us, but as soon as she'd leave, he would do something terrible and make me laugh. There were so many things that I couldn't stand about him. The worst was that he was always telling me he could do just about everything better than I. "Bet I can pick more blackberries than you," he jeered at me one day. "No, you can't." "Can so." "Cannot." "Can," he whispered. "Not," I said louder. "Can," he whispered, so that I could hardly hear him. "Not," I screamed back. We both picked berries for most of the afternoon. Well, he upped and I didn't. He not only picked more berries than I, he set a record that wasn't even challenged for the next 10 years. "You make me sick, Richard Barber," I yelled at him. Then he smiled that smile that only a rotten-headed older brother could smile. I guess I would have to face it. He could run the fastest, climb the fastest, throw the farthest, sit the longest, get the dirtiest, burp the loudest, and spit the farthest. He had no equal, certainly not me, and I'm 4 years older than you. ... Always have been and always will be," he sneered. There had to be something I could do that he couldn't. Then he inspired a thought. No, let me stop that. Then an inspired thought comforted me like a fresh breeze on a hot summer day. "Oh, Richie," I cooed as I stood next to the rhubarb bushes. "Do you like rhubarb?" "No," he said. "It's the sourest stuff on this planet." Now I knew at long last I had him. "I bet I can eat more of this raw rhubarb than you without getting the pukers," I challenged. "I don't think so." "I do." "I don't," he said, narrowing his eyes. "I do," I insisted. "Don't," he hissed, looking smug. "Do," I said furiously as I grabbed the first stalk and started chewing, almost down to the leaf. When I couldn't get one more sour bite into my mouth, he was still eating with relish. "I thought you said you didn't like rhubarb." I said through pursed lips. I don't like it. I love it, he announced as he popped the last stalk into his mouth. I was so mad. I couldn't even feel how my belly was starting to ache. I can't stand you, Richard Barber. I double dog can't stand you, I screamed as I went into the house to be consoled by my grandmother. Yeah, and I'm 4 years older than you, too, you little twerp. Also, always have been and always will be, he called after me. Then he laughed that rotten, red-headed older brother laugh. That night at dinner, I could hardly eat. Have you been eating angry apples again, child? Bubby asked as she sliced me a huge wedge of rhubarb pie. I baked your favorite. Richard gave me one of his extra toothy, rotten, weaseled eye, green, toothy grin. At bedtime, my Bubby came and sat on the edge of my bed like she did every night. Look, a falling star, she said. We watched it streak across the sky. Then she spit twice between her fingers and gave her chest a loud slap. Why did you do that, Bubby? I asked. I was making a wish. Didn't you know that wishes on falling stars come true? At last I knew how I was going to get my brother back. For the longest time, I watched the dark sky until I saw a shooting star across the night. Then I spit between my two fingers and I slapped my chest. It was done. My wish was to do something. And I'm going to pause there. What do you think her wish was? My wish was to do something, anything, better than my brother. I'd show him. The next morning, all I could think about was my wish. I was thinking about it so hard I almost didn't notice the wagons and trucks pulling into the field down the road near Four Corners. A traveling carnival, my brother shouted as he ran toward me. They're setting up right here in our field. Bet I can eat more hot dogs than you can, he teased. He was already starting it. By this time, I was going to do something so incredible that even he would have to sit up and take notice. I had a star wish. I'd show my red-headed older brother all right. Boys and girls, have you ever been to a carnival? I wonder what your favorite ride is. That night, I ran straight for the merry-go-round. We must have taken 50 turns on that carousel. And then my brother got off. I stayed on. I went around and around and around. I knew I could do this longer than you, I shouted to my brother, feeling proud, but just a bit dizzy. Tricia! I heard my Bubby call out. Get off that thing, it's time to go home. The last thing I remember was stepping off from the platform. The next thing I knew, I woke up with Bubby sitting on the edge of my bed. Mom and Grandpa were there too. You gave us all a fright, Mama said. How do you feel? What happened? I asked. You fell. My rotten-headed, red-headed, older brother announced with the biggest grin on his face. I don't know what we would have done, my Bubby said softly. Your brother carried you all the way home, and then he had to run to get Dr. Lee. You had to get stitches. I watched it all, he said excitedly. You fell off the merry-go-round right into some pop bottles, my Gramps added. You even passed out, my brother chirps. Looks like you finally did something special. It was from that exact moment that our relationship changed somehow. Thanks, Richie, I said to him. What's a big brother for anyway? He said, blushing. That night, we were all out in the yard. On hot Michigan nights, it was my family's custom to sleep outside where it was cool. Look at those stars, Bubby said quietly. Wishes are funny, aren't they? I said. Sometimes they come true differently than you think they will. That's why you have to be very careful what you wish for. It just may come true, Bubby said. Then she squeezed both of our hands. Hang on to the grass, she whispered. Why, Bub? My brother asked. Because if we don't, we might float up to the stars. Then she leaned over and kissed us both 3 times. I kiss your eyes. I hold both of your hearts in my good keeping. And this night I thank God that I walked this earth with both of you. Amen, she said. Then we all just lay in our blankets in the gentle summer night. I'll always be 4 years older than you, though, my brother whispered softly, and then he smiled. All of us held one another's hands, and we drifted off to sleep. Boys and girls, that's the end of the story. I hope that you liked it. I wonder if you have ever had a competition with your brother or sister, or maybe a friend, or maybe even a cousin. Maybe sometimes somebody says something to you like, I'm better at this than you are. And that sometimes happens in life. It happens even to grown-ups. I want you to draw your favorite part of this story on some piece of paper, and then you can take a picture of it and put it in a message to me on Teams. I wonder if you could label who the characters were and maybe draw your favorite picture. I know that you couldn't see the pictures, but perhaps you can draw what you saw in your mind. Thanks for checking in with me today. Have a great one.